so great to be with you guys up here, but I have to say, I miss you, but these little wise ones fill me with joy, and you're going to hear a little bit about them today. So there goes our future leaders of Unity North, right? Future leaders of our world, really. And like I said before, if we could have gotten some of those messages when we were kids, and that's our whole point of what we do downstairs, is to infuse these children with the notion that God is within them, the light of God surrounds them, they are perfect and whole however they show up. And if anything can help them in this kind of crazy world know the truth of that, then we have done our jobs. I call them the little wee prophets. And we're going to start with a story. You ready? Okay. This is called Little Soul and the Sun, and it was actually written by Neil Donald Walsh of Conversations with God fame. Once upon no time, there was a little soul who said to God,
I know who I am.
And God said,
That's wonderful, little soul. Who are you?
I am the light.
God smiled a big smile.
That's right, little soul. You are the light.
But soon, knowing who it was just not enough. Little soul wanted to be who it was, not just know it. So little soul went back to God and asked for help.
God, I know I'm the light, but how can I be the light?
Since you cannot see yourself as the light when you are the light, when you're in the light, will surround you with darkness.
In order to experience anything at all, the exact opposite of it will appear. It is a great gift, because without it, you cannot know what anything is like.
And when you get scared,
And you will get scared.
remember this,
I will send nothing but angels
playing a part
to help you understand the truth of who you are.
Yes, so little soul, you know you're the light, right? She's getting shy on me, so never mind. Let's give little soul a hand. We were all little souls. Great job. Need me to take that? You're gonna go off to class with Blue Bear. And my talk just disappeared from my iPad. So there's that. No, here it is. I'm in a homiletics course right now, and they say, always prepare for that. So little soul. So our little soul decides to come to earth to play. And in my way of thinking, we were with Source, I'm thinking, what experiences do we want to have, right? Because for me, I want to be fully human. I understand that I am a divine expression of God, but I came here for a reason. And I think we need that contrast, those experiences that are maybe unlike the truth of who we are. So for me, I jumped on the Earth cruise and I signed up for Bully Bingo. And I spent about 2 years on the dizzy cancer carousel. Really dizzy. What about you? How about, did anybody win the tournament of divorce darts? Oh, I didn't think you'd raise your hands, but that's okay. That's okay. And perhaps maybe you or a loved one signed up for the addiction arts and crafts. And I know for sure most, if not all of us, have tickets to the Judging Mothers Jamboree. It is the longest show in history, despite horrible reviews, because they're all critics. I'm sorry, Mom. So we sign up for these experiences to remember who we really are. And what Little Soul said, I am the light, but I need to be the light. So wading through the muck and darkness is just something that we're doing as we remember who we are. But how do we do that? So we're in these human bodies, right? And I figure, let's explore them. And I am a person that wants to know everything. I realized in my homiletics class that I speak about our minds a lot. They teach you like how to craft a sermon, what your style is, do you kind of have a shtick, or what's your go-to? And mine, neuroscience. So, did you know that our brain can process 11 million bits of information a second? But our conscious mind can only process 40 to 50 bits. I mean, that is a huge discrepancy. 11 million, but we can only process 40 to 50? So everybody hold out their thumb like this. That thumb is the amount of information that you can process at any one time. Everything's in the periphery, right? But it's like, I am tired. No, I'm not. I am loved. That is the most that we can. And my friend said, all right, put I am on your thumb, and now it's wearing off. But if you put I am, whatever you are, and Richard talked about this a few weeks ago, will follow you. That's the amount of information that we can process at any one time. So when we know, principle number 3, that our thoughts and our words have real power. So what can we do to make sure that we're using that power to remember who we are? And that is through our awareness. So if we know that that information is only as big as our thumb, we can then choose where to direct our thoughts. Now, what keeps me up at night, this has literally kept me up at night. The perception, when we're walking around in our world, it's really easy to just assume that what we're seeing out there is, in general, what other people are seeing. But one night, it occurred to me, what if my red is not red to you? And my mind went, uh-oh. Like, it really stressed me out, because it's like we take things for granted, right? I'm assuming that this blue, which, by the way, we're twins. That was the spirit, I guess, doing that. But that this blue, in my mind, this blue and that blue are the same. Does it look the same to you?
No, I'm wearing pink today.
Oh, I'm done. I can't. Well, we want to make sense of the world. So does anybody remember this? It's the dress that broke the internet. Yeah. How many people saw that as a blue and black dress? Raise your hands. How many people saw that as a white and gold dress? Interesting. This is what happened at first service too. So this dress broke the internet, and my theory about that was it went viral, and it was so stressful for people because we want, in this crazy world, to know that at least blue is blue, black is black, gold is gold. And there was like a half and half. Actually, most people saw it as blue and black. Unity North, which we usually say is 50-50, saw most of it as gold and white. Now, the neuroscientists actually have an answer as to why this was different for other people. It's who, say it? Does somebody know the answer? Oh, now you won't say it. Okay. What? Perception of the light. So we're talking about our light today. If you are someone who is outside more often, or were outside before you saw the picture for the first time, your eyes took out the blue light and assumed that that dress was outside. Now go back one slide. So you think it's in the shadow. If, however, you're more of an inside person or we're inside, you're taking out the gold and seeing the blue and black. So knowing that, can you shift your perception between the two?
You know what's really freaky, Julie? I've never had this happen. This screen is blue and black, but the screen in the back of the room is gold and white.
Oh, it is.
I knew I had a multiple personality all along.
That's crazy. Okay, go to the next slide, which helps us see it. So you see there in the top picture, it now makes sense that where she's in the sun looks gold and white, and where she's not is black and blue. Is that not crazy? Yeah. So here's the bad news. So if nothing is real, and it's all based on our perception, that's, we bring every experience, every encounter, everything that is filtered through the lens of who we are. Because our brain hates uncertainty. It's actually wired that way. Because back when we were running away from saber-toothed tigers, if we were just in awe of everything and going, oh wow, look at that new cloud I've never seen, we'd get eaten. We had to stay resolute, and we had to know that when we're in that part of the desert, there are lions. So our brain fills in the information. Now that's the scary part, unfortunately, because it fills in information based on our prior experiences. But before you panic, there is hope. If we are aware that we can change our intention, we can actually rewire our brains. But it takes a lot, and that's a different talk. Neuroplasticity, though, if you're not aware, we can rewire that because it's like a record player. The groove, it stays in the groove, it stays in the groove, and if you want to change that, you can go out, but it's going to pull back to the groove until you do it enough times. So we have the power, but we can't be too hard on ourselves because we're wired that we don't like uncertainty. So, today's all about kids. So why did I talk about our brains? Because our kids were with Source really recently, right? And they come with a unique perspective on what is real and what isn't real. For a child, every cardboard box is a Viking ship and every stick is a sword or a wand, and they live in infinite potential at all times. But then we grow up. Right? We grow up. Well, I get the benefit of being with your children every week, and they infuse me with that knowing that I can change what I think at a moment's notice. So children are really the ones to teach us about how to shift our perspective and show up with every single experience that we're with in a new way. Jesus knew this. So he says in Matthew 18, verse 1-5, "Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Jesus called a little child to himself and set him in the midst of them and said, "Most certainly I tell you, unless you turn and become like a child, you will in no way enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever therefore humbles himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one such as a little child in my name receives me." So let's unpack that for a second. Test time. I don't think I'll ever get through a talk without asking a question. But in unity, where do we say the kingdom of God is? Yes, you all passed. Within. The kingdom of God is within, and that's why we affirm that with the children every single week. And what the kingdom of God is the opening of our heart space to allow the divine mind to fill us with the knowing that we are the Christ presence. And when our brain is filling information in about people that, annoy you or whatever, that closes us off. But children, right? I mean, they can be stamping their feet like everything in the whole world is the worst and they can't even stand it, and you hand them a cookie and they're like, yay! I mean, everything is 0 to 100 with a child, but they stay in that infinite possibility. So what does it mean then? What did Jesus mean about becoming like a child is, in order to get to that kingdom within, we have to be like a child, and humble is that opening. We have to come before ourselves, really, to infuse that space with the idea that we are the Christ. Okay, so it could be that to get to the kingdom of God, to fully realize our divine potential, that we have to live from a place of curiosity, awe, and wonder, just like a child. So I call them we prophets all the time, and I'm going to tell you a couple stories about some of our kids. But Myrtle Fillmore, who's the co-founder of Unity, understood the power of children very deeply. She said that she had a vision in the early days that after founding Unity, she saw herself surrounded with crowds of people and, quote, many of them unruly children. And a voice within asked, "Who will take care of the children?" And the voice answered her, "You are to take care of the children. This is your work." And so began the We Wisdom magazine. Now, I don't know, how many of you know that there was a We Wisdom magazine? A few. Yeah. It actually, at one point, was the longest running children's magazine in the country. And they didn't make any, Unity was right there, but it was interdenominational. People had, it was like the highlights of my generation. And poems, stories, and she would ask the kids to write in and send them stories and jokes and everything, and she would answer, and her staff would answer every letter. That publication went on for 98 years. It started in August of 1893, and in 1991, they published the last issue. And they were brokenhearted, but they just could not sustain it in that digital age. And she was the editor for the first 30 years, Myrtle. So really, this was like her full-time passion and work. Here's what she has to say about her mission. And this is where the living curriculum that Unity follows with their children kind of comes from. Myrtle said this: "Our mission is not to entertain the children, but to call them out. To be always entertained is to be dwarfed and dependent, but to be called out is to follow the harmonious law of the soul's unfoldment. Who meddles with the rosebud? What fingers are deft enough to pry open that marvel of folded beauty? We're wise enough to leave it alone, to follow the glad law of its own unfolding. But our children, have we dealt as wisely with these buds of marvelous possibility? Have we always remembered that they, too, must quicken and unfold through the innate law of their own genius?" And I found that quote when I got home from the Moonflower concert. How many people were there? Yeah, we had a great turnout. And that's something that we do every year, and those evening primroses, as most of you know, literally open before our eyes. And we would never dare to pry it open. So I had about 12 kids that came that night, and we were doing our own fun activities downstairs. But I kept telling them, we're gonna get to go and see these magical flowers, and they're gonna open before your very eyes, and you're gonna see them just go like this. And so we went out, and we had to wait. If you were there, we had to wait, because they did it on their own time. And so as they began to open, I started looking at all the children, and they were like, And are Kira's parents here today? Aw. Kira said, "I made that happen." She used her magic. And it just really hit me. It's not that they didn't appreciate the flower opening, it's that they live in an infinite potential where, of course, a flower is going to magically open. But for us adults, we were like, this is the best thing ever, which proves my point that we can become like a child. So, I have a few lessons that I've learned from your children in the last year. Number 1, life is infinite potential and you create your own reality. Now that is principle 3, right? So they live in potential. So last week, Sadie, who's about 3, where's Whitney? There she is. Sadie is 3, and she was making a card for her mom. And she went like Van Gogh. She took the crayon and was like, and I said, "Oh, that's beautiful. What is it?" And she went, "It's a purple elephant flying without a trunk." Like, I should absolutely know that, right? And I said, "Oh." And she was so convincing that I was like, maybe there is one. I mean, it was like, how could you not know that? So living in that potential of course there's a purple elephant with no trunk. I mean, they do it, we can do it too. Lesson 2, see the face of God in everyone. Oh, just lost my talk again. That's principle number 2, right? We are inherently divine, we have a spark of divinity. So, last summer, I had a whole lesson planned, but school was starting the next day. And so I just said off the top of my head, is everybody ready for school? And of course, I expected them to go, no. But one little girl said, no, I don't want to go back because I'm bullied. Well, I was playing bullied bingo through middle school, so I knew exactly what that felt like. So of course, my lesson got dropped, and we spent the next hour talking about bullying. And I remember being really concerned because I thought, I have to say the right thing. This kid could end up in therapy. One wrong thing that a person says to a child can really affect their whole life. I am still having the repercussions of being bullied so severely. And so then I just took a breath and I said, all right, Spirit, have your way. I'm not going to think my way out of this. Julie does not need to say anything. And so we talked about it. And Zoe was one of the ones, and Sage, who offered some really awesome things about why is a bully a bully. And then little man Gavin, he's the one, he's infamous. If you were here and I handed him a mic and he went, "Rah!" And then I handed him a mic again because Spirit told me to, and he was really chill. This little boy is from some other place because he comes up with the most heartfelt and wise things. And he looked at everybody and said, well, hurt people hurt people. Maybe the bully forgot God lives inside him, and we can show him. And I'll go first because God is in my name. His last name is Godwin. So he was going to lead the charge, and it's like everybody just melted, all of the teachers and all of the guides. So we can see the face of God in every person. Forgive and forget. Next lesson. How many people are pretty good at forgiving at this point? Oh, wow. Okay. Got some work. You have a class on that? No shame here. It is difficult. Who is less likely to forget? That's the one that is difficult, right? Yeah, it's okay to raise your hand. We can forgive. We know that we are all in the non-dual plane. We are all the same. But again, our brain doesn't want us to forget because it wants us to fill in the gap. And I told this story at first service about my father, and I don't know why it came up. But my dad was the most gentle, awesome, loyal, fiercely loyal person that I've ever known. But I grew up in the 70s, and he would say, ugh, women drivers. And I thought today, when I thought of it, I was like, wait, that's terrible. But we kind of accepted it back then a little bit. It was, but that was apparently his experience at some point. So whenever he saw a woman driving, I think he kind of projected what they might do. Because again, we only know what we experienced before unless we consciously move our attention. Forgive and forget. Kids forget almost immediately. So Friday night, Mike Stott's grandson Derek was here, and Aiden. Did he go downstairs, right? So Aiden and Derek were going to play detective. So I'm sitting there, and Derek comes up with Aiden, and he's arrested him. He's got his hands behind his back, and I said, what's going on? And he says, I've arrested him. I'm the detective. And Aiden was like, you're cutting off the blood supply. So trying to figure out, he could not let him out of custody, right? I mean, in his world, he was pretending. So I immediately said, what are the charges? And he didn't know. So I said, well, I'm the judge. And I hired a lawyer. We spent a few minutes talking about the case, but he still had his arms. Finally, Aiden had enough. So he let him go, and Aiden comes over and he goes, man, he really hurt me. Well, I'm learning a lot about how to show up with these children. And in the old days, we would say, you need to apologize. But that doesn't work. If he was not feeling sorry because he thought he was arresting him, because in his mind it was real, him saying, oh, I'm sorry, wasn't really going to do anything. So we've sort of adopted a, how can you fix it? Or what can you do? What's your part of fixing this situation? So Aiden said, man, Derek, look at my arms. I know you arrested me, but you wouldn't let go. And Derek, so I thought, what's going to happen? So Derek sat there. Now, previously, the caper they were on was to find a sign that disappeared from our classroom that was very important. And I was certain somebody had thrown it out. So they were on the caper. And I don't know if Aiden found it. I don't know why he got arrested. Still don't. So Derek sits there and he's going, I'm sorry, do you want to play again? And Aiden goes, yeah, and they got up and they left. It was like there was no more, forgive and forget, and they were best buds. They went off, and they found the sign. Derek came up with the sign in his hands, and I have a picture. I meant to put it up. He was so proud of himself, and I was not faking it. I was like, where did you find this? And he said, well, I looked for the evidence. He said, I went over to where it was on the wall. There was tape residue. So then there was tape residue. So I went over there, and I saw there was tape residue there, and so I looked behind, and there was the sign. It was like, wow. These are the kind of things I get to do every single week. The last lesson, the most fun, embrace your extra. I have been told that I'm extra. I mean, really, who thinks that? Thank you. I'm embracing my extra. Did anybody ever see that Friends episode where Phoebe and Monica go for a run, and Phoebe is running like this? Ooh, sorry. Phoebe's running like this, and Monica's like, oh my gosh, I cannot be seen with her. She's running like a crazy person. And by the end of the episode, Phoebe basically says, that is what brings me joy. I'm gonna run like a child. And so by the end, Monica's like, whoa, gets all into it. I have decided at 53, I'm gonna embrace my extra. You maybe see me in pigtails. I'm gonna keep wearing them. They make me happy. Thank you. Is Colleen in the room? Colleen, Friday night. I have a thing where I think sloths are magical. I have never been in the presence of a sloth in my life. And my theory was, if it ever happened, that I would be so emotional that I would cry. Friday night, my friends said, oh my gosh, that woman has a sloth with her. How many people met that sloth? Yeah, right? He was everywhere. And I said, nobody's gonna bring a sloth. They're like endangered. They convinced me so much that that sloth was real that I started to cry. I went to my child, Infinite Possibility, and I looked at Colleen, and this was my first hint. She saw me crying, and she started to go, uh-oh. It, of course, was not a real sloth, but that means that whenever I do come in contact with a real sloth, I'm going to cry, and I am okay with that because they are magical. So I'm going to invite you to embrace your extra. And at first service, we did this, and it was magical. But I invited people to start to play. So I want everybody really quick to think of something they can do this week that your inner child wants to do that maybe you think is a little too extra. So I'm going to give you just a few seconds. Is anybody ready? Can you shout it out? Climb a tree. That happened in first service. I grew up with 3 apple trees. Climbing a tree, that is awesome. Somebody else? Barefoot in the rain. Oh, so you're Mother Nature now? You're gonna make it rain? It's gonna rain today. Go out and jump in the puddles. How many people loved that when they were little? I was allowed to do it, but only if there wasn't lightning. All right, yell another one out. We're infusing this energy with a childlike openness of finding the kingdom of God within. Play jacks. That's fun. What? Finger paint. That is fun too. Do they have edible finger paint? Because that would be fun. Play in the dirt. Why? It is grunty. Will you find worms? That's fun. All day. All right, a couple more. What? A cannonball in the pool? That is awesome. Cannonball! That's a good one. Do you have a hoverboard? Bailey, are you going to let him ride your hoverboard? Oh, yes. John Jackson at the first service is going to buy a skateboard. And my first thought, I went back into my adult mind, and I fell off a ladder 2 weeks ago, and I thought, John, you shouldn't do that. And then I was like, oh, I just did not take my own advice. Yes, buy the skateboard, but please wear a helmet. So I'm going to encourage you. I told first service I'll get up early and come next week because I want to hear what we did to play. It actually raises our immune systems. It can help with anxiety and depression. So before you come next week, I'll be downstairs, but Reverend Richard is going to ask you what you did. And so just to finish out, we're going to follow our light. The beauty of this earthly game is that like little soul, we can remember who we are and be who we are, even in this human experience. And when we do, when we shine our light, when we're willing to be extra, when we're willing to do what our soul calls to do, and shed that notion that we're adults and you shouldn't have a pink room and you shouldn't have lights everywhere and you shouldn't wear pigtails, when we let that go, our light grows brighter. And guess what happens? You see my light and your light. You see her light and your light. And pretty soon all our light is lighting up the entire world, and I'm convinced that that is how we're going to get to a place of world peace. And so, little souls everywhere, let's go out and play.